right. So anyway, Marcus Freeman takes over. And look, Brian Kelly did such an underrated job at Notre Dame. I don't think a lot of people understand what kind of a great job Brian Kelly did at Notre Dame because he didn't win any championships. And Notre Dame, when we were growing up, it's about winning championships. Uh, but he did a tremendous job. And I think, look, he saw the writing on the wall. I went as far as I can go. I don't think I can get the team over the hump. With the restrictions we have here, I just don't think I can get it done. Whatever the case may be, I think they can. Yes, if they have a right quarterback, or if they have a couple more players, or a couple more breaks here and there, maybe. But bottom line is, he's gone, and we'll talk about him when we talk about LSU. Marcus Freeman gets the gig, and this could be a very interesting hire.
It could well be just that. Brian Kelly, we knew he was going. He had lipstick on his collar. He was being wooed by LSU. Maybe we didn't all realize that, but the money just he couldn't say no to. The fact of the matter is, coming into the situation here right now, Marcus Freeman has got some big, big shoes to fill, as you mentioned here. The job that Kelly did at Notre Dame was nothing short of miraculous, especially for a team that takes on as difficult a schedule as they do each and every year. He had them in the playoffs. They were always involved in the playoff picture. You talk about the playoffs and the Big Four. Notre Dame made it the Fab Five, if you will. So now what can Freeman do here to fulfill those shoes? Well, it may be a little bit of a reach for Freeman because he's never been a head coach before, and you're doing it at a big power university like Notre Dame. But they went with the guy that brought all the talent into Notre Dame while Kelly was there. He was their ace #1 recruiter, was Freeman. He knows the players, and he'll get the job done, at least from a recruitment standpoint. So it's going to largely depend upon his coaching staff and the people that he surrounds himself with.
Yeah, and we know that defense will be his trademark. That's his side of the ball. There's still going to be good players back on defense. So I think they're going to be just as good on the defensive side of the ball. And I think over the last couple of years, they've had a good enough defense to win a national championship. It's the offense. The offense just hasn't been explosive enough. And I don't know if that's going to change this year. I just don't. I mean, especially now they're going to bring in a new quarterback. But I guess that's actually a good thing because, the Cones of the world and who was the one before that got who was the kid that was before Cone that was there for a while?
The Notre Dame quarterback, it escapes me because they've had so many, and they just
that's it. They're just another guy. Yeah, right. But he was there for like 3 years or so, and it's just another guy. They don't have that special quarterback, so I don't know if they have that because nobody knows. These are young quarterbacks now. They didn't go out in the transfer portal and bring any star quarterbacks in here. So that's the big question mark. And you talk about schedule at Ohio State to open up the season. So, yeah, okay. And then they also got to play BYU in Vegas. They play Clemson at home again. That's becoming an every year kind of thing. And then at the end of the season at USC. So they have like 4 prime opponents on their schedule. And the rest of them, are like you said, are still not cupcakes, but they should win, including California, North Carolina, and such. I don't know. Maybe they win. I don't know. Maybe they could. I don't know if they can win 2 out of 4 out of that schedule. Maybe they can.
Well, if you take a look at the Irish here, they're not going to be backing down from anybody. There's no question about that. And they have had, on paper at least, a good enough offense and a good enough defense to compete. Look at what they've done the last 4 years. They've scored more than 30 points a game each and every year. They've gained more than 425 yards each and every year, and their defense is adequate. So everything has been there for them. As you mentioned, they just can't get over the hump. And for them to make it to the college football playoff here, they're going to have to go in there with only 1 loss because they don't have a conference affiliate. They can't play into a conference championship game. So who will that 1 loss be? Will it be Ohio State? Will it be Southern Cal, both on the road? Will it be Clemson at home? BYU is going to be a real tricky football game for them. That game's in Vegas, and it's going to be a big BYU crowd there. No question about that. So I don't think this football team makes it to the college football playoff this year for that reason, because the schedule's awfully tough. Yeah. And also because there's these big shoes, as we mentioned here, about Marcus Freeman having to fill this particular year. I see a slip in or I should say Notre Dame this year. I think 9 wins is probably going to be what they'll top out at.
Yeah, because really, there's going to be a lot of emotion. How long will that emotion with the new coach? How long will that go? And it could disappear immediately because they have to open the season against Ohio State, and if they get beat up in their first game, well, who knows what happens the rest of the season? They're not beating Ohio State. Okay, that's just not going to happen. I'd be shocked. Everybody would be shocked if they went on Ohio State and beat Ohio State. If they can do that, they will have a realistic, excellent chance to get to the playoffs. But let's just say that's the loss. That means they're going to have to beat BYU, they're going to have to beat Clemson, and they're going to have to beat USC. Those are things that can happen as long as they're a really good football team. Once again, they have to get really good quarterback play from a quarterback that has no experience. So we'll see. You never know. It's college. You never know when these really star players pop up out of nowhere.
You never know what happens in matchups like Ohio State and Notre Dame. If Notre Dame goes into the horseshoe and pulls the upset, look up and down their schedule here. It's conceivable Notre Dame could be favored in every game the rest of the season.
If they beat Ohio State, yeah.
Yes, they would. Yeah, exactly. That means at home against Clemson, which, that game's going to probably be just about there like that. And then at Southern Cal, depending upon what happens to the Trojans and Notre Dame along the way. So that first game for them for this football season, for Marcus Freeman, for the Irish, means a lot. I don't know how they'll fare in the football game, but that's the game that everything will key off of when they visit Ohio State.
It's because even though BYU has a tough schedule, it's just not – I don't know if you look at their schedule, it's monstrous, and I think it's definitely good enough where if they were to, say, go undefeated from this schedule, they'd be in the playoffs. Because when you take on Baylor, Oregon, Notre Dame, Arkansas, Boise State, Stanford, I mean, that's just really tough. But since we know they're not on par with Notre Dame, we figured they're the top independent school for the group of fives. And that's going to be the only thing that's going to hold them back, Mark. That is a real tough schedule. They've got a talented quarterback in Jaron Hall. But I just wonder whether or not they're going to be able to win. I don't know. You think they can win like 9 or 10 games with that schedule?
I believe they can, Greg. They've won 21 games, 10 and 11 the past 2 years. And the best news for BYU is they are the #1 ranked team overall in the country in returning experience. That's by Bill Conley from ESPN. In our magazine, they're #2. Then he revised those rankings after the magazine went to print. They are the #1 ranked team right now. And those teams that are ranked #1 in returning experience always do well the next year against the spread. You couple that with the fact that last year BYU, while they won 10 games, they were only 4-8 against the spread. They couldn't handle the point spread number. I believe they'll get the job done this year. They're going to be a real nice play-on team for most of the year, especially when they're taking points in those big games.
Yeah, because last year, like you mentioned, 21-4 the last 2 years. The schedule toughened up big time last year, and yet they were still excellent. 5-0, undefeated against the Pac-12, and they beat Utah for the first time in like over a decade, and all Utah did was win the Pac-12 championship.
And may win the Pac-12 again this year. That's how good Utah is. So that was a big feather in BYU's cap last year, and I know that Kalani Sitake is really looking forward to this. And he's got Jaron Hall back, that quarterback who makes all the noise for them. So, again, they're a football team you have to have on your watch list this season.
Yeah, the thing that the reason why I think they'll have the biggest trouble is because of the defense. They don't really have they are a couple of decent players. They always do, but it's just not loaded. It's really going to be more about the offense and Jaron Hall. Can they outscore some of those teams that they're going to be playing? But it should be fun. I mean, right off the bat, those first 3 games, even the opener, and this is a little bit of a teaser because we're going to talk about the AAC next. This is one of my top sleepers in all of college football. Not to win a championship, but that's USF. I love what's going on in South Florida. And that's their first game. So they got to go to South Florida. Then it's Baylor at home, and it's at Oregon. So that's going to be a tough way to start.
Well, let me tell you this. If they go to South Florida and stub their toe, the world's want to kind of bail out on BYU, that will be the time to get on
That's it.
BYU.
Take them
Okay.
the next week against Baylor.
Exactly, or
Revenge.
the week after that against when they go to Oregon, right? So there'll be some juicy spots for the Cougars this year, and I'm with you. I think South Florida is also going to be a real must-watch team this year as well.
And of course they lost their big-time running back as well. BYU did. So that's something that, yeah, but like all the other, and that's like really the only major starter they lost. Though.
It's the only starter they lost. Exactly right.
Army, Monken has done an incredible job at Army. 44-20 over the last 5 years, 39-12 for the last 5 years. Andre Carter, it's all about Andre Carter. We're going to follow Andre Carter this year, one of the top defensive players that I've seen come out of Army, maybe ever. So he could be a first-round draft pick.
He can, and this is an Army football team that I read an article about Jeff Monken, and he's really a little bit put back at how little respect that the Army football program gets, and especially since he's been at the helm, because he's really turned things around there at this program. He's been there 9 years. He's won 58 games, and they have been the best of all the military teams here of late. 9 wins, back-to-back football seasons for this team. And what I like about them is they went out on a bit of a sour note last year when they lost it to Navy in that game as a 7-point favorite here. That will get their attention early on this football season here. I think you've got to have Army on your play-on list this year as well. And also, the little note we said in the magazine about the stat you'll like is he's only 2 wins away from being the second winningest coach in Army football history. He'll get those 2 wins early on in the football season here. This football team is always coming to play hard because they're a military school and they're very well coached.
Yeah, the one thing that you're looking for with these types of teams that run the triple option is you're looking for that quarterback. Navy usually has those superstar quarterbacks. Army hasn't, but they've had decent quarterback play, which is the reason they've been winning. I think they'll have. I think they got one of these quarterbacks back this year, which will stabilize the offense, but nobody's special. The schedule is also tough. Right out of the gates, they take on two of the best Group of 5 teams from last year. They got to go at Coastal Carolina to start the season, and then they host UTSA the very next week. They also have Wake Forest, who they lost to at home last year. They got to go on the road there. By the way, I know we're doing Wake Forest on our next report. Sad to hear the news about Sam Hartman. Hopefully, it's not a season-long kind of injury, but they'll be at Wake Forest in October. And that's a pretty tough schedule for Army. But you know what? If they can win 2 out of those 3, it'll be a great season.
You look at their first 5 games. The first 5 opponents won a combined 52 games last year. Nothing easy is going to happen with Army early out of the gate this football season here. So they're going to have to come hard and come charged and come prepared. Even Villanova is going to be a tough game for them, if for no other reason, because they're coming off of, as you mentioned, Coastal Carolina and UTSA. So don't jump off of Army if they stub their toe a little bit early. And if they open up 2 and 3, that just means reload the cannons with this football team here. But I have to put them on my play-on list this year. I'm a big Jeff Monken fan.
And good point. Mention also Georgia State.
Yes.
Who's in that top 5, because Elliott has done a fantastic job with Georgia State, and they could definitely be a sleeper in the Sun Belt.
Look at the last half of their schedule there, if you will. Take a look at it, Greg. They close out their season here, the last 7 games against only 1 winning team.
There you go.
Yep. So they will build some momentum by the end of the season.
And that's Air Force.
That's correct.
Okay, Liberty. Wow. What a 2 seasons for Hugh Freeze and Liberty. Matter of fact, last year, not as successful as the 10-1 2020 season, but still, what is that, 18? Really, if you look at it, Hugh Freeze so far is 26-11 at Liberty. So Willis is gone. Charlie Brewer becomes the new quarterback from Baylor.
How about that?
You really have to like that.
You sure do. He did a nice job with Baylor. He was beat out by an up-and-coming quarterback who will be starting for them this year. Nice transfer for Liberty to haul him in and to keep the momentum going for Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze is a winner. Wherever it is that he's been, he's won football games straight up and against the spread. And like we said, he loves to beat up crippled teams. That's the point spread thing you'll want to remember all season long. When he goes up against teams that are less than 333 in the year, he's 20-4 against the spread. Hugh Freeze, a major cripple shooter.
All right. So yeah, well, Liberty should be fine again this year. Their first 3 games, 2 of them are pretty tough. They got to take on UAB at home and at Wake Forest. They also play BYU and Arkansas as 2 of their toughest games on the season. That Arkansas game is going to be on the road. As far as some of the other teams, these independents, new coaches. So you've got Jerry Kill at New Mexico State. They're 8-30, 8-30 the last 4 years. They were 25-74 in a 9-year run with Doug Martin, who's gone. They'll be in the Conference USA, by the way, next year. UConn gets Jim Moore, who we talked about, the former NFL coach and UCLA coach, and Don Brown, as we mentioned, at UMass. They were 2-26 the last 3 years. Don Brown, let's remember, he was a head coach at UMass during the glory days. They won an 06. They played in the 2006 title game in the FCS at the time, and he was 43-19 in 5 years from 2004 to 2008 at UMass. And I have to think, in my opinion, I think out of those 3 teams, New Mexico State, UConn, and UMass, I'm going to give UMass the edge. I think they're going to have the better of the year between those 3 teams.
Well, I'm going to run with New Mexico State. I'm a big, huge Jerry Kill fan. I'm a little bit soft-hearted. I loved how he battled back from all of his afflictions, his disabilities. And wherever he's been, his teams give everything they've got for the man. Key stat for New Mexico State this year is Jerry Kill is outstanding as a double-digit underdog. 25 times in his career, he's beat the spread 17 times. They'll be getting double-digit points plenty of times this year, okay? Right. So remember that when New Mexico State takes doubles this year.
Now, is that information you are providing, is that in the magazine?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
And now, when you have the newsletter, is that something that when it's the week of those games, do you kind of put that information in the newsletter?
You can be sure I'll be calling that out when he's a double-digit underdog, okay? He goes to Minnesota. He goes to Wisconsin. My goodness. He goes to Missouri
every week.
At Liberty. I mean, he's going to be taking a boatload of points.
Yeah.
One quick note in that first game against Nevada is you got a Nevada football team here that led the country last year in turnover margin. They lost their quarterback, Carson Strong. He's going to be in the NFL this football season here. They're changing their whole quarterback scheme. They're going from an air raid to a pro-style attack here. A lot of changes at Nevada. New Mexico State is getting a good chunk of points in this game. In our preseason football newsletter, we previewed the first 7 or 8 games in the college football card, and you'll find in there our upset special is New Mexico State over Nevada.
Ooh, I like it. What is this point spread?
There you go. +8 right now. Okay.
Wow. +8. I bet you people are going to look at that without looking at anything else, and they're going to go, how in the world is Nevada only an 8-point favorite?
Well, for a lot of the reasons I just mentioned.
Sure. Take advantage.